She warned him not once, but every time he showed up with that smile that made her forget the years between them. She said she wasn't ready, that he was too young, too kind, too much. But sometimes the heart wants the very thing it's afraid of, and when he stayed even after she broke, she realized maybe she didn't want to be alone anymore. The first thing no one noticed about the bookstore wasn't the rows of mismatched shelves or the cozy reading nooks tucked between fiction and fantasy. It wasn't the scent of old paper or the tiny bell that jingled over the door like it had somewhere more important to be. It was the woman behind the counter. She didn't look up when he stepped inside. Instead, she continued stamping the inside of a novel with calm mechanical focus. Her dark hair was pulled into a haphazard bun, reading glasses perched halfway down her nose like they had lost their will to fight gravity. A small radio played jazz quietly on a shelf nearby, as if the store itself knew how to breathe softly. Noah cleared his throat. She looked up, blinked once, then offered a deadpan, "If you're here to ask if we sell coffee, I might actually scream." He blinked. "I was just here to apply for the part-time job." Her eyes narrowed a little. "Even worse." Noah smiled nervously. "I saw the flyer on the window." She exhaled almost like a sigh of resignation. "You're young." "I get that a lot." She finally stood, extending a hand over the counter. "Sienna, I own this stubborn pile of stories." "Noah," he said, shaking her hand. "All right, Noah. Do you alphabetize like you mean it?" "I think so." She gave him a look that was somewhere between curiosity and amusement. "We'll find out. Come back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Don't be late, and don't try to fix the record player. Everyone does, and they all fail." Noah nodded, unsure if he had just been hired or dismissed. As he left, he heard her mutter under her breath, "Lord help me, another romantic-looking millennial." He showed up the next morning 10 minutes early, half hoping she wouldn't remember him. She did. "You're early," she said, glancing at her watch. "You said not to be late." She sipped from a steaming mug that read, "Don't judge a bookstore by its owner." That wasn't a compliment, but she gave him a tour anyway. "Here's the front. Don't ask customers if they need help. If they want help, they'll look lost or angry." Same rule applies to datings, by the way. He tried not to laugh. She let him pass the used literature section. "This shelf is haunted by bad paperbacks." "Don't ask." "The children's area, wipe everything down. Kids are sweet but sticky." And finally, the back office, "Off limits unless it's on fire. Even then hesitate." It became clear to Noah within the hour that working at a page-turner wasn't just a job. It was Sienna's fortress. Everything in its place. Everything quiet. No cheesy music, no pushy upsells. Just stories and silence. She wasn't cold exactly. Just protected. "You've done this a while," he asked once, organizing a cart of hardcovers. Sienna looked up from her spreadsheet. "Since before you probably had your first heartbreak, 6th grade, Noah replied. She arched an eyebrow. "Serious playground betrayal," he added with a smile. "Jenny Milan said she liked me and then ran off with Kyle." "Ah, the heartbreak of betrayal and dodgeball." For a second, she actually smiled. By the second week, he learned her routines. At 11 sharp, she brewed a second pot of coffee. At 3:07, she always disappeared into the back office for exactly 11 minutes. He timed it once, not on purpose. She never touched the romance section, ever. One quiet afternoon, he finally asked, "You don't shelve romance?" "I shelve it," she said, typing something on the register. "I just don't read it." "Why not?" She turned to him. "Because the real stuff doesn't read that sweet." Noah nodded slowly. "But sometimes it does." "Let me guess," she said, folding her arms. "You're one of those hopefuls who believes every heartbreak is just a stepping stone to something better." "I believe people carry stories worth hearing." She tilted her head. "Careful, that sounds dangerously close to empathy." "You say that like it's a flaw." She looked at him for a long moment. "It is if you work here." There were quiet days in the store when no one came in for hours. On those days, Sienna would let the radio play a little louder. Sometimes it was jazz, sometimes old rock. Occasionally, he'd catch her humming softly when she thought she was alone. Once he snuck a peek at her desk when she stepped away. A well-worn copy of The Little Prince sat next to her computer. Its cover was cracked and folded at the edges like it had been held through heartbreak. She came back before he could move. "Don't fall in love with the job," she said without looking at him. "I'm not falling in love," he replied casually. She looked up sharply. "Good, don't." But the air felt heavier after that. One Friday, a storm rolled in. Customers trickled out before closing, and the sky outside went steel gray. As Noah was locking the front door, the power flickered and died. Sienna lit 3 mismatched candles without a word, one in the front, one on the desk, one by the record player. "No generator?" Noah asked. "Too romantic," she said. He laughed. "How can a generator be romantic? Anything with candlelight has dangerous potential." They sat in the quiet glow surrounded by thousands of pages whispering old stories. "Why the bookstore?" he asked. She leaned back in her chair. "It was supposed to be temporary, something to distract me after things fell apart." "Things, She shrugged. "A marriage, a plan, a version of me that no longer exists." Noah didn't push. He just nodded. "But then this place kept surviving," she added softly. "And I did too." "You still are." She looked at him again. There was something unreadable in her gaze, like he was a sentence she hadn't decided how to interpret. "Don't make this personal, Noah." He almost said, "Why not?" But instead he said, "Okay." They sat in silence until the lights flickered back on, and when they did, she blew out the candles faster than he expected. By the end of the month, he found himself lingering after shifts. She noticed. "You know this is temporary, right?" she said one night, watching him restock a shelf he'd already done. "Everything is," he replied without turning. Sienna stared at him. He didn't flinch under her gaze. If anything, he leaned into it. "You're persistent," she said. "I like puzzles." "I'm not a puzzle, I'm a closed book, Noah." He smiled. "Even closed books have weight." She opened her mouth, then stopped. Her fingers tapped once against the counter. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "I told you not to get comfortable." He met her eyes. "Maybe I just feel at home here." Sienna didn't respond, but she didn't tell him to leave either. And as he cleaned up for the night, he caught her watching him just briefly, like she was beginning to see something she hadn't expected. Maybe that was the beginning, or maybe it was the first warning. Either way, Noah wasn't going anywhere just yet. The first real shift happened on a Wednesday. A regular customer, an older man with kind eyes and slow steps, walked in holding a bouquet of tulips and a novel. He greeted Noah, then made his way to the counter where Sienna sat behind the register, sipping her usual black coffee with too little patience and too many thoughts. "Your favorite," the man said, laying the flowers gently on the counter. Sienna froze. Noah looked up from across the store. Her voice when it came was calm, too calm. "Thank you, Arthur." Arthur smiled like he'd done this before, like he'd hoped this time might go differently. "Maybe dinner sometime. No pressure." She met his gaze, then lowered her eyes. "I'm not there." Arthur nodded, eyes dimming. "You haven't been there in 5 years, Sienna, I know." Her voice cracked so slightly Noah almost missed it. "And I'm sorry." Arthur left quietly. The bell over the door gave a reluctant chime. Noah stood behind a row of biographies, frozen. The tulips remained on the counter untouched. Later, as they closed up, Noah reached for them. "Leave them," Sienna said. "They're going to wilt." She looked at him, her tone brittle. "So let them." Noah set the flowers down. "He was your husband." Sienna let out a breath like it had been caged for too long. "No, he was someone who stayed after the funeral. Someone kind enough to wait. I just never asked him to." The bookstore went quiet again. Sienna moved behind the register, shoulders tight. "Don't look at me like that," she added, not facing him. "Like what? Like you think you can fix this." "I don't," Noah said. "But maybe I can understand it." That was the first time she didn't answer. The next day, Sienna didn't show up until noon. Noah found a note on the door. "Open at 10. I trust you. S." It was short, but it felt like a line pulled taut between them. He worked a morning solo, helped a college student find old poetry, rang up a mother buying books for her daughter, reorganized the travel section because the world felt out of reach. When Sienna finally walked in, she looked tired. Her hair was still damp, her blouse wrinkled, but her eyes, the sharp steel he was used to, looked softened, like something had unraveled in private. She gave him a nod. No deaths, no disasters. Only a woman who tried to pay with Canadian dollars. Barbaric, she muttered, half smiling. She made herself coffee, but when she turned, she stopped. You changed the display. Noah glanced at the front table. Thought we'd lead with some spring titles. She walked to the table, fingers grazing the books. You moved the time traveler's wife to the front. I thought it was poetic. She met his eyes quiet. That book always made me cry. That's why I put it there. Something in her expression shifted. She looked at him like she didn't know whether to thank him or run. Instead, she changed the subject. I'm going to the back. If someone asks for Hemingway, tell them to try therapy. He laughed, but the humor didn't last. Not really, because when she disappeared behind the curtain to the back room, he noticed something tucked between the pages of The Time Traveler's Wife. A small, folded photo. It had fallen out when she touched it. He picked it up carefully. A man, early 40s, smiling, stood with Sienna in front of a bookstore sign. She looked happier, lighter. Her hand was on his chest, and his watch, Silver Classic, glistened in the sun. It didn't feel right to hold it, so Noah gently slipped it back inside the book. And yet the image stayed with him. That night, as they locked up together, Sienna lingered at the door. You work hard, she said quietly. You could have quit weeks ago. I didn't want to. She looked at him like she was trying to believe that, like she hadn't let herself believe anything in years. Then she said at the first real warning, Noah, don't fall for me. I'm not, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Okay, he corrected. Not all the way, her mouth twitched. I don't need saving. I didn't show up to save you, he said. I just wanted a job. You're the one who keeps letting me stay. That caught her off guard. She looked away, then back. You remind me of him, you know, she whispered. Noah felt something twist in his chest. Your husband, she nodded slowly. The way you stand when you're trying to look relaxed. The way you talk about books like they're people. He swallowed. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's dangerous, she said. They stood in the threshold of the shop, the street light casting warm orange onto the sidewalk. You say that like it's my fault. It's mine, she replied. That's the worst part. That weekend, the bookstore hosted a local poetry reading. Sienna usually avoided them, but this time she stayed hovering near the shelves, pretending to sort classics, while glancing toward the back where the event was set up. Noah was managing the mic. The poets were nervous, but the crowd was kind. There was laughter, even clapping. At one point, a young woman read a piece about watching her mother grieve. Noah saw Sienna pause, eyes locked on the floor. Later, after everyone left and they were sweeping up programs, Sienna said that last poem. Yeah. She talked about grief like it was a roommate. Always there, always noisy. I like that line too. Sienna looked at him. I live with a ghost, Noah, and not the romantic kind. I'm not afraid of ghosts. Then you're stupid. He chuckled, stepping closer. Maybe, but I'm still here. She didn't back away, but her voice dropped. If I let you in even a little, you won't stay. He touched the edge of the counter between them, not reaching for her, but grounding himself. Maybe I won't, he said honestly, but maybe I will. She looked at him for a long time, longer than she ever had, and then she whispered, you shouldn't say things like that. He nodded, but I meant it. She didn't tell him to stop, and that silence, that was the most dangerous sound of all. Sienna never knocked. She'd just appear. And that night, Wednesday, just after 9, was no different. Noah had just finished making instant noodles in his small kitchen when the door buzzed. He opened it, expecting maybe his neighbor complaining about music. Instead, there she was wearing a navy raincoat, no umbrella hair, damp eyes brighter than usual. Do you always open the door without checking who it is? She asked. Only when I'm hoping and it's you. She blinked at that. I shouldn't be here. Agreed, but come in anyway. He stepped aside and she hesitated for a heartbeat before walking in. It was a small apartment, one-bedroom walls painted the same dull beige as every other building built after 2000. But Noah had tried. Bookshelves with bent poetry collections. A plant trying its best to live. A record player humming something slow and jazzy. You live like someone who thinks in paragraphs, she said. You look like someone who ran from something. She didn't respond right away, just walked over to his record player and watched the vinyl spin. I was walking, she said. Got caught in the rain. Didn't want to go home. Why not? She shrugged. Home feels less like home lately, more like a photograph, something I keep looking at but can't step into. Noah leaned on the kitchen counter. You always talk like that. Like what? Like you're trying not to bleed too much. She smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. You know, she said, turning, most men your age would have backed off by now. I'm not most men. No, she said softly, you're not. They ended up on the couch. She held his coffee mug in both hands like it anchored her. Her coat was draped over the chair. Her knees were curled beneath her. She looked different there, out of place, in the best way, like an expensive painting hung in a student gallery. I used to think grief would fade, she said, like a bruise, but it just shifts. Hides in your favorite coffee, your favorite street, your favorite voice. Then it jumps when you least expect it. He nodded. What was he like, your husband? She looked up, surprised, he asked, surprised she wanted to answer. Calm, smarter than me, but never made me feel it. He'd remember the names of authors I only mentioned once, knew how I took my tea before I even did. He was ordinary in a way I needed. And then you lost him. I didn't lose him, she said, sharper now. He was taken. The room went quiet, the vinyl crackled. I'm sorry, Noah said. She breathed in like she hadn't in hours. I don't talk about him with anyone. Not like this. I'm not anyone. That landed heavier than it should have. She looked down at the coffee, then at him. You want to kiss me right now? Noah didn't flinch. Yes. She smiled, sad and soft. And you know why I can't let you? Yes. And you're still here? Yes. Sienna stood up, then suddenly walking toward his window like she needed air. You scare me, she admitted. Noah stayed seated. You don't scare me. She turned. You should. And then it happened, one of those small, unexpected moments that bends the world. She walked back to the couch, sat beside him again, and let her head rest gently on his shoulder. Not romantic, not sexual, just heavy human. Her voice was a whisper. I didn't come here for this. I know. I just wanted to sit with someone who doesn't ask me to be okay. Noah nodded, not moving. Then sit as long as you need. They stayed that way until the jazz record ended, until the silence wasn't awkward, until her breathing slowed. And when she finally got up to leave long after midnight, he walked her to the door. Before stepping out, she paused. Don't write me into a fantasy, Noah. I'm not. Good, she whispered, because I'm not here to be rescued. He smiled. And I'm not here to rescue you. She left without another word, but outside, just beyond the streetlight, she stopped, turned back, and for the first time since he'd met her, Sienna looked at him like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't afraid of letting something begin. Even if it scared her, even if she wasn't ready, especially because she wasn't ready. There were things Noah understood about Sienna without needing to be told, like how she hated silence unless she chose it, how her smiles were rarely automatic. They were gifts, deliberate and fragile, and how, despite her warning him, she kept showing up. But what he hadn't realized yet was this: people grieving don't follow a straight line. They zigzag, they backpedal, they run when they feel too seen. He learned that the hard way. It started innocently, a Saturday morning, early autumn sun pouring through the windows of her bookstore like golden silk. Noah stopped by after a morning jog, sweat still clinging to his collar hair tousled. She was shelving used hardcovers in the back sleeves, rolled up, humming something old and low, an Ella Fitzgerald tune. You have a singing voice, he said. She didn't look at him, but her mouth twitched. It's not for sale. I'm not buying, just admiring. She turned finally, them eyes soft. What are you doing here? He held up 2 coffees. One's for me, the other's for someone I've been thinking about all night. That made her pause. She took the cup, sipped it. You remembered how I like it? Of course. A quiet settled between them, not awkward, just warm. And then he asked something he shouldn't have. Do you think you'll ever let he go? She froze. Her body stiffened like a string being pulled too tight. Noah tried to recover. I mean, I didn't mean just someday when it doesn't hurt like this anymore. She put the coffee down. So that's what you're waiting for? No, I want to understand you. You want to fix me. That's not what I said, but that's what you meant. He stepped forward. Sienna, I care about you. I'm not trying to replace anyone. You don't get it. She snapped the sharpest she'd ever sounded. You don't get what it's like to look at someone new and feel like you're betraying a ghost. I'm not asking you to forget him. I just, he trailed off because truthfully, he didn't know what he was asking. She crossed her arms. You think because you've shown up with coffees and poetry and late night conversations that this is a movie where I suddenly fall into your arms, but Noah, this isn't that. I am not that. I never asked you to be. Yes, you did, she said quietly. Every time you looked at me like I was something unfinished, waiting for you to complete. That stung more than it should have. He stepped back. Maybe I should go. Maybe you should. He didn't sleep that night, didn't eat much the next day either. And the day after that, he passed the bookstore 3 times without going in. Her windows were dark by 7 p.m. Her chalkboard sign was blank. By Tuesday, he gave in, wrote a note 3 lines folded into an old library card he'd kept since he was a kid. I wasn't trying to fix you. I just wanted to know you, even the part still grieving. He slipped it under her shop door. Didn't expect anything. But on Thursday around 1 a.m., his phone buzzed. One word, coffee. And they met on a bench just outside the city where the noise thinned out and the stars felt closer. She had her hair in a loose braid, wore no makeup, no armor, just her. She sat beside him and offered him one of the 2 cups she held. I read your note, she said after a long silence. I figured. I still don't know what I'm doing. I don't either. She turned to him, voice quieter now. When my husband died, people told me to move on. I hated that phrase. It made it sound like grief was a train you could hop off if you were just brave enough. She looked down at her coffee. But then you showed up, and suddenly I wasn't sure if thy staying still was courage or fear. Noah swallowed hard. Sienna, I don't need you to be ready. I just need you to be honest. I'm terrified of how much I like being around you. Good, he said. So am I. She let out a soft laugh, a real one, and then without warning she reached for his hand. Not because the air was cold, not because it was romantic, but because it was time. I'm sorry for the other day, she said. No, he said gently. Don't apologize for protecting your heart. They sat like that a while, hands warm between them, coffee going cold. He didn't kiss her. She didn't ask him to. But something in the night shifted. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation you'd find in a movie. It was better. It was earned. It was raining the night she showed up at his door. Not the soft kind of rain that made people slow dance in movies, but a crashing cold downpour that made you run or stand still and feel it. Noah opened the door, hair messy, hoodie half zipped. His eyes widened the moment he saw her standing there, Sienna soaked to the skin, clutching a book to her chest like it might keep her from falling apart. I wasn't going to come, she said. He blinked. Okay. But then I realized I'd rather be wrong here with you than right alone. Noah stepped back wordless, letting her in. She left puddles on his floor, shivered slightly. He offered her a towel. She didn't take it. I brought something, she said instead. She held out the book. It was old, the pages warped by time. His favorite, she whispered. I thought if I ever read it again, it would break me. She swallowed, eyes shining. But tonight I want to read it with you. They sat on the couch, the storm rattling the windows. She leaned into him as she turned the pages, her voice trembling on the first few words. He didn't speak, just listened, not to the book, but to her, the courage it took, the weight she'd carried. Halfway through, her voice cracked. She paused. He gently took the book from her hands, set it aside, and reached for her cheek. Ah, he said softly, you don't have to keep proving you're strong. I'm tired, she whispered. I know, I spent so long trying to keep the grief beautiful, dignified. But it's not. It's ugly and chaotic and unfair. And still, she looked at him. You're here. I'm not going anywhere. You should have. He smiled, but I didn't. She laughed, then wet, embarrassed, beautiful. And then she kissed him. Not a fevered cinematic kiss. A real one. Tender, careful, grateful. Like saying, I see you, I know what this means. I choose you anyway. In the days that followed, everything felt new but familiar. They made pancakes on Sunday morning, burned the first batch, and ate them anyway. She played old records in the bookstore, and he danced with her when no one was looking. Sometimes she'd go quiet. A shadow would pass behind her eyes, and he'd wait, not fix, not solve, just stay. One evening they visited the cemetery. It wasn't his idea. It was hers. She stood by the grave of her late husband, a small bouquet in her hand. She didn't cry, just spoke. "Thank you," she whispered to the stone, "for what we had, for teaching me what love looked like. I hope you'd understand what I'm about to do." Then she took Noah's hand. "I think it's time," she said, "to live again." Weeks passed. The town shifted toward winter. The bookstore smelled of pine and old paper, and something almost like joy. One afternoon, Noah found a handwritten note slipped between two books on the shelf. It was from her. "You told me not to fall for you, but you gave me every reason to. And now I'm not falling. I'm already there." He turned to see her standing in the doorway, leaning on the frame, watching him read it. "Do you still think I'm warning you off?" she asked. He walked toward her, slow and steady. "No," he said, "but I think you were never warning me." "What was I doing, begging someone to stay?" She smiled. "I'm staying," he said. And this time she didn't say a word. She just took his hand and didn't let go. The story of Sienna and Noah reveals a profound life lesson. Healing from grief requires courage to embrace new connections, even when fear whispers to stay closed off. Sienna, guarded by her bookstore and the weight of her late husband's memory, warned Noah not to fall for her, yet his persistent kindness and patience showed that love doesn't demand forgetting the past. It asks for space to grow alongside it. This teaches us that vulnerability is not weakness, but a brave step toward living again. Noah's choice to stay to listen and to honor Sienna's grief without trying to fix her reminds us to meet people where they are, offering presence over solutions. Their journey from a chance job application to a tender, hard-earned bond underscores that life's most meaningful relationships often begin in unexpected moments, blooming through shared silences and small, deliberate acts of care. We're reminded to keep our hearts open, to risk loving again, and to trust that time can transform pain into possibility. What lessons did Sienna and Noah's story spark in you? Have you ever found connection in an unexpected place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're eager to hear your stories. If this emotional tale moved you, please like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell to join our community of storytellers. Your support fuels these heartfelt narratives, so don't miss out. Subscribe now, and let's keep exploring the beauty of human connection together.